All right. Well, today on the Plant Cutting Podcast, we are excited to have mycologist and herbal clinician and author, botanist, Christopher Hobbs. So, how are you doing today, Christopher?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's we have a beautiful day. And after 2 months of grueling hot weather, even 110, it got up to 110 and like 90 degrees at 11 o'clock at night, which is pretty unusual for us, even though it is hot. At least
Wow.
my watermelons did really well. So I've been growing watermelons this year, and well, every year they're so exciting. I love growing watermelons. Probably my
Yeah.
favorite thing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And really
Yeah.
diving into a good watermelon, you can't beat that.
Yeah. So good. It's interesting to see like what thrives in the really hot drought years and, what doesn't do
Um,
so well.
yeah, but we had the big fire. We had a big
Mm-hmm.
mosquito fire. So the air quality was like 500 and it was 110 out. That doesn't make for a good evening. It really
Right.
doesn't.
And tell our listeners where you're calling in from.
Yeah, I'm calling in from Placerville out in the countryside.
California.
It's an old farming valley where pears, they used to grow pears.
Mm.
And so I've got 2 acres. And I grow a lot of native plants and Mediterranean herbs. My whole front yard is filled
Nice.
up with Mediterranean herbs of every
Cool.
kind that you can imagine. And yeah, putting more trees in, and it's just really a beautiful place.
Have you gotten out to do any good hikes this summer?
Well, yes, that's one reason why I moved up here from Davis. I lived in Davis where the university is, and that's an hour away from Berkeley, the Bay Area, which I love Berkeley. That's where I went to school
Hmm.
and the Bay Area. And I do like going over there. And I've been in the Bay Area a lot of my adult life, but it's just so crowded and crazy now. And so and Davis down in the valley, the Central Valley, it's rather polluted. It's not really very, very good air. It's a bowl, and and there's lots of pesticides in farms, and
Yeah.
the water table is not, it's got chromium 24. I mean, let's see, lithium 24 in it, or chromium, no,
Oh, no.
chromium 24. So it's not exactly a pristine environment down there, as you can imagine, with all these farms and pesticides and dust and cars. Millions of cars drive by every day. So I moved up here at 1,600 feet, and it's only an hour from the high Sierra. So I can get up to the high country and really enjoy it up there, and so fresh and wonderful up there, 8,000 feet. And
Yeah.
we had a big morel bloom this year. So
Nice.
big,
The
big
best. Yeah, morels are so good.
months,
Months?
Months of
months of
morels.
picking morels because
Oh,
of the
wow.
giant
Oh.
fires.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's one upside. Uh,
Hey, everything in life has a silver lining.
Yeah,
It's true.
absolutely. And morels are very silver.
That's a silver lining. Yeah, I dried down a bunch, and they were really
Awesome.
thick-walled greenies. They were so delicious.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very cool. We found Isaac found a morel the size of his head 2 years ago. That was just a giant morel. I'd never seen anything like it. It was really cool.
but yeah, we've got like just a couple weeks of morel season here.
Yeah, it's a short one.
Yeah.
hmm So I know you've been doing work with plants and fungi for pretty much your whole adult life, but how did you come to the plant path?
Oh, my grandmother on my mother's side was a community herbalist in Pasadena, California, and she took Colorado Boulevard. She took the Red Line trolley down to Chinatown. This is in the 1920s, and studied with a Chinese herbalist. So
Wow.
strangely enough, she's my spiritual mentor, is my grandmother.
hmm
I never knew her. She died before I was born, unfortunately.
Hmm.
She was a lot of different things, but she was a concert pianist that studied in Paris. But then she came back and was a herbalist, and in the community had her herb garden in her front yard, and served the people of her local community there. And then her mother, my great grandmother, was also an herbalist from New York, Rochester, and she was also a lawyer and a tarot reader.
Oh, wow.
That's a really
So-
interesting combo.
Yeah. And then on my dad's side, he was a professor of botany and his dad was a professor of botany.
Oh, okay.
So I really don't think I had much of a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nobody was interested in mushrooms though, particularly.
Yeah.
So that just struck me, mushrooms. I went to a mushroom conference in 77, one of the first that Paul Stamets organized. And there were a lot of mushroom luminaries there, Dr. Smith and Guzman. I don't know if you know who Gaston Guzman is.
I don't.
He's the world's leading authority, was the world's leading authority on psilocybin.
Okay.
And so I got pretty fired up by just being around those people and Orcas Island, and took off with mushrooms.
Yes.
So, but it's a lineage.
Right. So, yeah, if you have any other teachers or mentors that were influential on your path, we'd love to hear about them too.
Oh, well, so many.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So many besides my grandmother's herbal notebooks and just, I've been a musician too. And so
Okay.
she really was probably the major influence on my life, though I never knew her. That's pretty strange,
So
but
you
it's
had her notebooks.
yeah, some of her herbal notebooks that I
Oh,
could read, and and music too, which was really great, piano music.
yeah.
So, but otherwise, early mentors were definitely Paul Bragg. I don't know if you know who he is, but
I don't.
he is the maybe arguably the founder of health food stores in this country. He was a big fasting advocate. And so I got his book, and early on I did a lot of fasting and cleansing and herbal, and that's when I started with herbs, and I studied with Paul Bragg when he was still alive. He used to travel around and teach people about health and eating a healthy diet and vegetarianism and especially fasting. His book is called The Miracle of Fasting, and still a major influence on so many people. And now, he used to talk about it, how important it was and how healing fasting is. And now we have the science to back it up. So
Yeah.
there's all you probably know, intermittent fasting and all these other ways of fasting. And he was teaching people in the 50s and 60s about the importance, and early 70s about the importance of fasting. So he was my first big health teacher. And my mom too. They're Seventh-day advocates, and they believe in vegetarianism and healthy diet and fresh air and all that kind of stuff. And that was way back when. So all of this came together for me. But Paul Bragg certainly was a major influence. And then I went to study on Orcas Island with the Polarity Institute, and took a bunch of their courses and joined their community. And that was a spiritual community that believed in Randolph Stone's teaching about the body as an energetic being, not just a physical being.
Yeah.
And so we learned how to do polarity therapy, and we did a lot of Gestalt work. Gestalt was founded or kind of popularized, or maybe just he came up with the techniques for Gestalt therapy, which Fritz Perls, which is, chair. It's basically role playing chair work where you put your mom or your significant other or whoever in the chair you're facing, and then you talk to them, and then you switch and you become that, you role play them, and you kind of try to see their point of view. And so we did a lot of that. And I had the group of students that I was coming up with in the class. And so you can't BS the system. You have to be truthful and say, and your mom might say, well, I know I wasn't the best mom, or dad, whatever it is. But that my parent was really abusive or whatever. So you kind of get to see their point of view. And then at the end of the day, it's what psilocybin and ayahuasca can do as well. And that is, you realize that love is just the most important aspect of it all. And you just want to let all that stuff go. And so that was a major turning point in my life when I let when I really delved deeply into that childhood stuff, and that was through Gestalt therapy and and the Polarity Institute. And then later I started microdosing psilocybin. So I have to say that psilocybin was my teacher
Yeah.
very, very early on. I've been microdosing. One time I microdosed for 9 months straight,
Uh-huh.
every day for 9 months, psilocybin, because we could go over the Oregon coast and pick them. They were growing over there in abundance in the cow field. So
Cool.
so we were picking bags and bags of psilocybin mushrooms and storing them in the freezer and just basically eating them every day for almost a year.
Mhm.
So that was a big teacher for me. And then the plants themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, because my dad was a professor of botany and he was always showing me this or that tree, and I was just interested in plant smells and tastes, and even as a very young child. And I'd always ask my dad, well, what's that tree and what's that bush? And so I was lucky that I had someone that really knew all the plants and all the trees and even the ornamental ones and the wild ones and everything. So I was very fortunate there. And then we found each other. The herbal community found each other through the work of quite a few people, but especially Rosemary Gladstar. I don't know if you know who she is, but
I don't know who's that.
Yeah, no, definitely no Rosemary.
Yeah, we interviewed her a while back.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Yeah, of course, she's great.
Well, she started the California School of Herbal Studies in Sonoma County, and another seminar there in the late 70s, and then the first class at the school in Forestville, California, Sonoma County, was 1980, and so I met them all on a journey. They got on a bus and were traveling around meeting all these incredible people like Gabriel Howarth, the co-founder of Seeds of Change. And then the first Brighton Bush Herbal Gathering happened in 1981 or 82. We still can't quite figure it out. But that's when David Winston and, we came from the East Coast, and Rosemary was there, and all these incredible people showed up, and we all met each other. And that was when, my cohort anyway of herbalists first got together in 1981 or 82 in the wilds of Oregon at Brighton Bush Hot Springs. And so that was really the start of a lot. And we learned from each other over the years. That was it. Rosemary started the International Herb Symposium, and then there were all these other herb conferences. Frontier had Herb Company had one in Iowa, and then they just started springing up everywhere, and people wanted to get together and do herb walks and offer classes and learn from each other and go to each other's classes. And so we were kind of learning together, really. Michael Tierra, Leslie Tierra, all these people were gathering together, and so many, Susan Weed and Matthew Wood, and on
Seven
and on.
Song? Was Seven Songs?
Seven Song, yeah, definitely.
He was in that herb crew.
Yeah, and so many of us got together throughout the country, and we formed the American Herbalist Guild at my house in 1989.
Wow.
In Santa Cruz. So that was the first meeting of the American Herbalist Guild, was at my house in 1989, and we founded the organization, and I'm happy to say it's still going strong now with a lot of new younger herbalists that are so passionate and enthusiastic, and so it's just we learn. I think I have to say my teachers were the other herbalists, and we were all learning together and studying and practicing and drinking herb teas and learning about the wild herbs. I was Seven Song's first botany teacher. I met him, and he came to Brighton Bush early on in the early 80s. And so we all did it together, really. And the plants, again, are our major teachers, of course, and wild nature. And so I don't know, it's been quite a journey, that's for sure.
That's so cool to hear about. I mean, conferences are definitely such an inspiring place and way to meet people. And I can see that, you know, you all learned so much from each other and inspired each other. And now you're inspiring all of these next generations of herbalists too. So it's cool to hear about that.
Well, with COVID, we couldn't really go to too many
Right.
conferences for a few years there. And fortunately, now it's opening up. I just went to 2 conferences in Colorado, Telluride Mushroom Festival and
Awesome.
the Yule Mushroom Festival. And that was just so great to be together with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm going up to the radical mycology
Oh, are you? Cool.
convergence.
Nice.
In just 10 days or something, radical mycology up in Portland. So I'm really looking forward to that. There are going to be hundreds of mushroom heads all meeting very soon here in Portland. So Peter McCoy, I just met him. He was in Colorado, so we got together there. And then I'm going to the American Herbalist Guild conference in Bethesda.
Maryland? Okay.
Bethesda, yeah. And that's happening in 2.5 weeks, something like that. And so I'll be back there. And if you make it down to Bethesda, I'll be doing a 4-hour workshop on Friday before the conference.
Awesome. Cool. What are you teaching?
Medicinal mushrooms.
Of course.
Heck yeah.
We should get into that, medicinal mushrooms. That seems to be what you're known mostly for. And especially this book is just
medicinal mushrooms.
Yeah, this is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is definitely the medicinal mushrooms. The Essential Guide is definitely like the premier book on making mushroom medicine. And you get into cooking, you get into ID, you get into profiles of various mushrooms, and the pictures are just outstanding.
What I'm happiest, one of the things I'm happiest about is the publisher, Story Publishing, let me cite the literature and many popular books. So this is a combination of a popular book, very practical, how to do it based on my many years of hands-on experience, and also learning from other mycologists, certainly. So many good mycologists, wonderful mycologists out there. But also they, as a scientist, they let me put the science in there and review all the clinical trials for each mushroom and all the psilocybin studies. So that was, to me, that was important. That's what I'm really happy about.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So was psilocybin your gateway drug into the other medicinal mushrooms, or did it come after?
No, that I was an herbalist. I started drinking herb teas and learning about herbal medicine and actually leading herb walks in 1968. I hate to tell you.
Wow.
So that was actually 9 years before I went to my first mushroom conference. So I was definitely an herbalist and botanist before mushrooms. But I wrote my first little pamphlet on medicinal mushrooms in 1986. So that was pretty early on too. Just a little homemade pamphlet, basically.
Cool, like a zine.
Yeah, and then the first substantial edition was 1995. I wrote a thicker book on medicinal mushrooms. And
we have that one too.
Yeah, the brown one. That one's been out since 1995, and this one I've been working on for quite a few years. I was going to do a scientific review, but at the end of the day, Story asked me to write a more popular guide. And so I thought that's probably more important than a scientific. And you get tired of crunching down studies after a while.
Yeah.
It really is. I love science and, I'm a scientist, but first and foremost, I'm an herbalist and I want it to be practical. And I want, I want to share my hands-on experience with them. So because I think with herbal medicine, I just keep saying, stop reading about it so much and start brewing, and start using them. And so many people will take a class and study it and, that's very interesting. And then no, the way to do it is just grow it in pots, grow them in your front yard, get rid of your lawn, just start growing sage and rosemary and thyme and oregano and helichrysum and angelica. And I mean, there's so many wonderful Mediterranean herbs. They're very hardy and they'll grow anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So garden sage,
Yeah.
and that's your medicine chest right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Not
there's
to
no
mention all
need.
the weeds too. I mean, there's so
And the
many
weeds,
Yeah.
definitely learn your weeds. It's just we just need to stop. And there's so many good herb books out there. I agree, conferences and so forth. But the whole point is to just get rid of the drugs and the pills and empty out your medicine chest and just go ahead. I mean, you can keep a bottle of Advil or whatever if you have a horrible toothache. Those are for really just acute conditions, for
Right.
only
Right.
for using for a very short time to get you over the hump. But overall, you want to learn natural methods. And for a horrible toothache, you can just put an ice pack on there and just start, get your willow bark and start drinking willow bark tea.
Yeah.
Or are there are extracts of willow bark out there too you can use, but
Mhm.
but my main point is just start using it,
Yeah.
Start
Definitely.
doing it. Yeah.
Mhm.
incorporating in your life, and it should be always the first line of treatment and first line of prevention is herbal medicine.
Yeah, one thing that I've really taken away from your book and your teachings has been mushrooms as a food medicine, but primarily food, meaning they're safe to take on a regular basis, not just an acute basis, like you're saying with Advil. You can take them daily, and you can eat them as food, or you can take them as mushroom powders.
Right.
And so I would love to get into mushroom powders specifically, because that's something that I used to take a lot of like double extracts, like tinctures of mushrooms, but you really recommend the powders. And I'm wondering if you can tell us about how you make a mushroom powder, like what the process looks like and why you would take them versus tincture or tea or whatever else.
Yeah, so this is a key concept for me. There are just a handful of key concepts when well, first of all, that herbs and mushrooms are not drugs. That's one of the key concepts. People say, well, can I take reishi along with so and so, or can I give reishi to my to my 5-year-old? Well, just get out of your head that it's a drug. It's not a drug, it's a food. And so, and this was an ancient concept. Obviously, Hippocrates said, let your food be your medicine and medicine be your food. So this is ancient. The understanding that food is the best medicine. And also the whole statement that Jim Duke came up with, I'd rather enjoy my medicine rather than, take these bitter white powders that have tons of side effects.
For sure.
Yeah.
What we want is medicine that is going to, and then the other key statement that somehow I came up with years ago, but it's like, with herbs, it's that you get side benefits, not side effects. So
Yes.
Yeah.
when you're drinking your reishi for inflammation or for a lung condition or calming down, whatever you're using it for, you're going to be getting a lot of side benefits. You're going to be feeding your microflora, and that's another key concept. I mean, if I were to mention 5 key concepts, one is definitely think of mushrooms and mushroom medicine as food medicine that you can use liberally and add it to your diet. Add the powders that you're making. I'll get back to making them in a minute, but so that's one definite big key concept. Another one is that herbs and mushroom medicine are not drugs. So that's really important. They act completely different. They don't, like drugs, the key concept there is that drugs are designed, they're manufactured by a giant corporation to bind irreversibly to your receptor sites. So that basically when you take Xanax, it's going to bind to your benzodiazepine receptors which are very important in your body for regulating mood and all kinds of other things, they're going to bind right in there to those receptor sites. They're powerful agonists. And the problem is they don't, your own natural neurotransmitters, like anandamide, your feel-good neurotransmitter, is not going to be able to bind. It basically, these drugs bind irreversibly and take the receptor sites offline. So then it's going to take you maybe a week or 2 weeks to produce your cells to produce new receptor sites. So they irreversibly bind. They basically, take them offline so that you can't. If you go out for a run, you're not going to be feeling good. You don't get that rush of, oh, I feel so good after that run, a feeling of well-being. That food. Have you ever had a big salad where you're just eating a salad and then afterwards you go, God, I just feel so good.
Mhm.
You get this feeling of well-being.
Yeah.
Unlike going in and getting a McDonald's hamburger, and you just don't get that feeling of well-being. It might, I don't know, somehow our twisted taste buds are going to want more, but it doesn't give you that feeling of just health.
It's craving. It's like,
it's a vibration of health. So these are receptor sites in our body that our own natural hormones our neurotransmitters are being released and giving us a gift, a reward for eating this really, really healthy food. And so that's another big point that I want to make, is that mushrooms won't do that. These mushroom compounds like phenolics and terpenes, they're not going to bind irreversibly to our binding sites. They're going to irreversibly bind to give us kind of some activation of, say, benzodiazepine receptors. So if we're eating reishi or drinking reishi tea, it might calm us down gently, but it's working with our body processes, not against them, like drugs do. So that's another big concept. And another big one that I'll mention right now, you might want to talk about it more later, but mycelium is every bit as good as fruiting bodies. So you can't really say that. Some people have a feeling that, and it's marketing, frankly, that only fruiting bodies are going to give you a real benefit. Mycelium is not. That's absolutely not true. Fruiting bodies are made up of mycelium in the first place. So yes, there's a little different gene expression going on when the mycelium is producing a fruiting body, but overall, mycelium products are as good as fruiting body products. It's just that you have to have a product that has a lot of mycelium in there and not substrate. So that's another really important key concept. So when considering how to extract mushrooms, which is back to your point, what's the best way to extract mushrooms? First of all, a lot of people do make tinctures of reishi, and they make double extractions. I describe how to make a double extraction in my book. It's basically boiling the herb, extracting the tea off of that, set it aside, and then tincture the mark in strong alcohol. That way you're going to, the concept is that you're going to pull out more alcohol soluble compounds like bulky sterols and things like that, which are C30 compounds. They're big and bulky. And it's true that some of them are not going to come out in a water-based extract very well.
Yeah.
Most of them will, because in a mushroom and in a plant, you get these big bulky molecules. They're terpenes or sterols, basically, are 4 or 5 ring compounds that are very bulky. And so they don't easily come off into H2O. Remember that water are all these little tiny molecules that are highly polar, an oxygen on one side and 2 hydrogens on the other side. And so they're moving around and they're putting the electrons. The hydrogen has a huge nucleus and compared with the electrons, and it's going to pull all the electron density off of the hydrogen atoms. And so it's going to be positive on that end and electronegative on the oxygen end. So those are all in the water. They're very happy finding an equilibrium of electronic stability, because the negative ends are going to go towards the positive ends, and it's going to settle down. But trying to put a giant bulky molecule into that milieu, it's not going to go in there. So hot water isn't going to be able to extract those big bulky triterpenes. So then they go, well, alcohol, ethanol is going to be a much better solvent to pull those out. However, in mushrooms and plants, they attach sugar molecules to those. Those are called glycosides. And so it turns out that almost all molecules in plants and mushrooms can be extracted by hot water. That is a major key concept right there.
For sure.
So you don't need alcohol. I mean, I'm not against tinctures, but
Right.
overall, I'm not a big tincture fan. First of all, because I don't imbibe alcohol. I don't think it's very great for young kids to be drinking a lot of alcohol. Some of these tinctures, if you take a couple shots of a tincture, you get, your throat burns from the alcohol. I mean, it's like 90% alcohol, ethanol.
Yeah.
So I'm not big on that. When you make a double extraction, you've got to have at least 25% ethanol in the finished product for it to be preserved long-term.
Right.
So that's 25% ethanol isn't so bad.
Yeah.
But so you can make a double extraction. It's convenient to carry with you. You can dose yourself with some terpenes, which are pulled out by the alcohol pretty well, and some beta glucans that the water boiling it is going to bring out. And then here's another very important key concept: beta glucans, which are cell wall components. They're basically strings of glucose molecules put together in a way that we can't digest in the upper gut. Those are not alcohol soluble. They have zero solubility in alcohol. So when you try to make a tincture, a reishi, you're getting 0 beta glucans, and those are literally the most important and the most widely studied of all mushroom constituents. And they certainly are the most important for activating our immune responses. So when you take a tincture of reishi, you're getting no beta glucans. So that's a very important concept right there. And so therefore, the double extraction is going to give you a little bit of beta glucans and some terpenes and phenolics and nucleotides.
Does it come out in water? So do the beta glucans come out in the tea? They don't come out in the tea either. It's more like you have to actually eat it. Oh, they do come out in the tea.
Yeah. Okay. So they are water soluble if they are separated from the chitin that you find. So a mushroom cell wall is made up of layers of these polymers, because the mushroom mycelium has to be very tough. It has to penetrate wood. It has to penetrate the soil and rock. So the mushroom cells are very tough layers of basically manoproteins for signaling. Next is the beta glucans, and next is chitin. And chitin is a aminoglycan polymer that's found in crab shells. It's very, very tough. And so, but that's good for the mushroom, because again, it can penetrate the soil, it can penetrate the wood. But chitin is very tightly bound to beta glucans in the cell wall of the mushroom. When you look at a cross section, remember it's beta glucan layer and a chitin layer. So these are almost inseparable in the wall. So when you make a reishi tea, say you cut up some dried reishi, you put it in your blender, you put water in there, or boiling kind of hot water in there, and you blend, or you might even soak the reishi because it's so tough and dry. You might soak it overnight to kind of hydrate it, and then take the reishi out and cut it up with a pair of shears and put it in your blender, put in some hot water, blend it all up, and then so that's and then and even boil it, or even put it in a pressure cooker. That's another idea. But say you boiled it for 2 hours, Well, you're only going to get, even after all that, you're only going to get 20 to 30% of the beta glucan out of the fruiting body. Only 20 to 30%. Because again, the reason why is because the beta glucans, which are pretty water soluble, because they're made up of glucose. So there's all these hydroxyl groups, and so they are polar. But because they're so tightly bound to chitin, which is completely not water soluble, then you're not going to be able to extract a lot of the beta glucans even after boiling. And when you drink the tea, you're not going to get a whole lot. You're only going to get 20 to 30% of the immunomodulating beta glucans. So what can you do about that? Well, first of all, put it in a pressure cooker and use what's called subcritical water extraction.
Okay.
So that's another concept, subcritical water extraction.
Okay.
Well, all it means, it sounds fancy. All it means is that when you know very well that you can, have you ever used a pressure cooker and put beans in there?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you can put the hardest beans in a pressure cooker, and you can cook it up for 10 minutes under pressure, and then let it cool down naturally for a half an hour. I have an Instant Pot. I use it all the time, twice a week, because legumes are the second highest source of fiber on the planet after mushrooms. So for defeating the microflora. So even after that, but anyway, when you take water and you boil it, it's going to come off of steam, right? So
Yeah.
that's going to change. It's going to go through a state change. It's going to go from a liquid to a gas. So, but that isn't a very good solvent. The steam is not a very good solvent. Too diffuse for one thing. So when you put the water under pressure, it's basically going to be very, very hot in there, but it's going to stay in a liquid form. Well, that's called subcritical water extraction. And very, very hot water is a great solvent for beta glucans, for chitin, for all of those big polymers. It's a great solvent. It can pull them all out and make them soluble. And then when we drink the tea, it's going to interact with our immune system going down our gut. 70% of our immune tissue is in our gut. So you're going to get all this immuno activity going down into our gut. Some of it's going to be taken up by macrophages through the M cells and so forth. But my point being is that this is the very best way to extract mushrooms, a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's well worth. And when you're manufacturing, if you were to start a small company making mushroom extracts, the first thing you want to do is get a high-tech pressure cooker, because you're going to be able to put your mushrooms in there, and it's going to raise the temperature really high, and it's going to be under pressure. So that's going to be a great solvent to pull all that chitin out of there, all the beta glucans, everything, all the actives out of there, the phenolics, which are also a little bit non-water soluble. So basically you can get everything, an alcohol out of there, all the phenolics, which are 3-ring molecules that are antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. So you get everything out of there, basically, all the medicine. And if you have a business, you want to get a high-tech pressure cooker. That's one of your first big tools. Then once it cools down, you're going to blend it up and make a slurry out of it. And then you're going to pour it in your food dehydrator. Hold on one second, I'll show you. I don't have unfortunately, the wafer, the nylon wafer, but I'll show you here. So this is another tool that you want, whether you're making it at home or not, and that is just a dehydrator. Stacking trays and set the temperature, dehydrate your slurry at, and you put a nylon wafer in here with lips on it, so you can pour your slurry in there, and then you stack them up in your food dehydrator, and you dehydrate it and make these, and put a little oil on it so it won't stick. And then you can pull out these wafers, and it's basically mushroom leather. So
Yeah.
you're pulling out the mushroom leather layers, and then you're going to put that and another big tool that you want, especially if you're going to be making them commercially, any of the powders. These tools are not high tech. You want to get a really good grinder. You want to get an herb grinder, which you can get online out of China. They ship them in here. Stainless steel. You can get any size grinder.
Like
And
a coffee grinder?
It's yeah, you could. I mean, I use a Braun coffee grinder, and that'll take it down to about 150 microns. So another really important concept with all this is that once you break it down, solubilize the beta-glucans of chitin through subcritical water extraction, and then dehydrate it and dry it to a wafer. The next concept is you want to get the particle size down as small as you can, because that means that your body is going to be able to interact a lot better with these active compounds as it goes through your gut. 70% of your immune tissue is in your gut. So that's really important. And so basically a micro powder is you want to get down to around 100 microns.
Okay.
And so the best coffee grinder, well, you know how you go to Starbucks and you get these little packets. I mean, I don't use them, but I have seen them. I've used one time or two. Get these little packets of it's the same thing with cocoa powder.
Like
They
instant coffee or cocoa
yeah, you
powder.
just pour it into water and stir it,
Uh-huh.
and it seems to dissolve. It's not really dissolving.
Uh-huh.
It's just forming a micro suspension so that it looks like it's dissolving, and then
Cool.
you drink it down.
Yeah.
And so that's about probably 100 microns. And then you can get down to a nano powder if you had the technology. You can buy grinders to get it down below 100 microns, down to 50 microns or even lower. And then it goes right in. It goes right into our body. And like turmeric is an herb that has is very famous as an anti-inflammatory for arthritis and so forth. But the active compounds are bulky again, and they aren't very absorbable. Our gut can only absorb a small amount of them. So what they do is in India, they make nano powders.
Okay.
Then you can take a capsule of turmeric nano powder and it goes right in.
Okay.
And you get super high absorption, and then you add, this is another thing, but you add a bioenhancer, like black pepper or phosphatidylcholine, and that prevents your liver from breaking down the curcumin into a non-active form. So, most of the products out there, you get a turmeric powder or turmeric product, that most of them are bioenhanced. And by the way, the original bioenhancer is the Ayurvedic formula called Trikatu. So you might check that out. When you're brewing up herbs, you could get some Trikatu powder, which is black pepper, long pepper, and ginger, and that enhances your body's ability to uptake the ginger and compounds and so forth.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So, or mushrooms.
Okay, so it works for mushrooms
my point
too.
being, then you have a fine powder of your reishi that's already been processed, and then you put it into a canning jar or whatever, and then you get these little herb scoops, and you put it into some hot water and mix it up, and it's perfect. That's absolutely, you capture everything that is in the mushroom. You're not throwing away. And then the other huge concept, before I stop talking here, but another huge concept is that, and this is just something that I just recently really started talking about more and more, is that we know, in the last 5 years, there's so much, and especially the last year or two, there's so much research on the importance of the diversity of our microbiome.
Yeah.
So this is a major concept that and that is because we're finding out that when our microbiome is very, very diverse, And there are many things that limit our, that dumb down our microbiome. Many things. For instance, antibiotics obviously are quite obvious. And antibiotics, by the way, if you buy chicken from the store and you eat a little chicken, or you buy this or that food, there can be antibiotics in that. If you
Right.
get non-organic, there are going to be antibiotics in there, maybe even organic. So this is going to, over time, is going to really dumb down our microflora in our gut. And what we know now is that this is going to affect our mood. There's a direct highway between our brain and our gut. And we're finding out that if your microflora is damaged in any way, or if you're not getting enough fiber, and it's got to be insoluble fiber too. It's got to be a type of fiber that isn't going to get broken down in your upper gut and doesn't make it down to your lower gut in a form that our microflora can feed on. This is another huge concept now. Remember that, like, a lot of people eat oats, maybe even every day eat oats. And this is a good thing because oats have beta glucans in them. Oats actually have beta glucans. They're different than mushroom beta glucans.
Right.
Oat beta glucans can still act as a very, very good prebiotic. To feed our microflora and help to increase the diversity. But when you cook oats, you're going to start breaking those beta glucans down into simpler forms that are then absorbed from our upper gut. And so they don't act as really efficient prebiotics. Now, the other half of that is that all oats on the market are cooked.
Oh.
Okay. So even like rolled oats, if you make like a muesli with them or something.
Pre-cooked.
They're pre-cooked.
What about
so oat groats, steel cut oats, they're all pre-cooked.
Wow.
Yeah,
Buy some oat groats from the store, try to sprout them.
Okay.
Soak them overnight, pour the water off, see if they sprout. They won't sprout. They're all cooked. But you can buy uncooked oats and unsteamed oats on eBay or wherever. I buy them from Brian Severson's farm. It's an organic family farm. They're naturally hulless oats then I've sprouted them. I've grown them out in my garden. So they're live oats. And this is another one of my key concepts, is that if you're eating oats every day, go for raw oats and soak them like muesli and add your fruit and nuts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And make some substitute milk products if you want to.
Throw your mushroom powder on top.
Or put your mushroom powder on top. Reishi is a little bitter, but make up some from turkey tail or from shiitake. Those are pretty bland tasting. And add your mushroom powder on there, and then you're getting the oat beta glucans in a form that will go down in your gut and feed your diversity. But the wonderful thing about mushroom fiber, mushrooms are the highest fiber food. They contain up to 60% fiber. Absolutely the highest fiber food.
And so what doesn't contain fiber as far as foods? Like what does contain and what doesn't contain fiber?
Well, that's the big deal here. Is that all animal products contain zero fiber. Milk, dairy, eggs, meat, bacon, no fiber. So
there's got to be a little bit of fiber in bacon, just a little bit.
Zero.
If you add mushroom powder to it, it's got some fiber. But that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Is that I'm not saying, because I've gotten pushback from this by saying, well, read the China study, the new edition of the China study. He cites so much research that the best diet for longevity and for less chronic illness, you can cut your incidence of chronic illness like cancer and heart disease in half just simply by going to a mostly whole foods plant-based diet. So, and by plant-based diet, I include mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah. And so also, like, if you are eating a lot of meat, make sure you get even more mushrooms and more fiber, because
that's oats.
Yeah.
Though there are meat products out there now that are made out of mushrooms where people And there are some new studies showing that people are even more satisfied
Mm.
if they eat these mushroom burgers than a beef
Oh.
patty. There have been 2 studies recently showing that people are more satisfied. They feel, their hunger and their desire for this umami flavor that meat
Right.
has. They're even more satisfied when it's a blinded study.
Oh,
They
cool.
eat a mushroom burger because they're putting texturizers and
Mhm.
maybe some coloring in there to make it look just like meat.
Gotcha.
And there are these products that are showing up which look like a steak, and they're actually from lion's mane or reishi or whatever.
I made some lion's mane crab cakes, like no crab in it, but just
Oh
lion's
boy,
mane
those
crab
are
cakes.
so good.
Oh my gosh, it was
Yeah.
the best. We
Those
had a
are
little
really
dinner
delicious.
and everybody loved them. Like I actually had to make them again the next night and again the next day for breakfast because they were so good.
And I mean,
I'm with you
I
100%.
Yeah.
I do eat meat, but I also I eat a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I will say that like chicken of the woods, you don't even need to do anything to it. It's better than chicken.
Yeah.
Maitake also, they do have
yeah.
that umami and the texture and
Right.
everything. Yeah, they're so good.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, those are some of my key concepts, but
Yeah.
it's so important to, if you want to live a long life,
Mhm.
like they do in the blue zones. Well, in the blue zones, the number one food are probably legumes,
Mhm.
legumes and vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds. I mean, if you're eating mostly that, you're going to cut your incidence of heart disease and cancer in half, and you're going to really increase the possibility of living longer, healthy life. And then based on the other half of the equation, if you want to live long and prosper, is get your fiber, and it's mostly I'm not saying don't eat meat. I'm not going to say that.
Mhm.
I eat sardines maybe once or twice a week, so
Mhm.
that's my nod to meat. But
Mhm.
as I've been a vegetarian mostly for 50 years.
Mhm.
But the other half of the equation, if you want to live long and prosper, is the new book, Gabor Mate's new book just came out, which is The Myth of Normal.
Mm.
And all of his books, and I heartily recommend watching some of his teachings, his interviews, read some of his books. Like When the Body Says No is a good first book to read.
Mm.
But the other part of the equation is that he's saying that almost all illness, physical illness, of course, we can harm our bodies through bad diet and so forth, damaging our vessels. But he's saying that a lot of it is really early lack of attunement with our parents, our caregivers, basically. Lack of attunement with our caregivers when we're young. They're too busy or whatever. So it's not frank abuse. It's not getting beaten or sexually abused.
Right.
It's just they don't have time for us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so he's saying that this is a natural, fundamental human need to attune and form a strong bond with our caregiver very early. And then after that, there is a lot of stress in our parents' lives. Can happen. They're both working a full-time job. They both have their own trauma from their lineage. So he's saying it's like lineage after lineage. It's really a lineage, and it's also a society and a community. So disease, in his new book, this is so fantastic. I mean, certainly it makes sense, but we're not separate from our community, and we're not separate from our society. We're not separate from our family. So when you get cancer, what he's saying is that this is not, you cannot separate a disease and say this is a disease you have. This is a process. You don't have a disease. You don't have cancer or heart disease. This is so much part of this is created, and this is a sign of a family, a community, a neighborhood, a society, a world that is out of balance. And this is so profound what he's saying, that what he's emphasizing in this chapter that I just read, that this person came up with after struggling with cancer for many years. and just the realization that cancer and heart disease are not, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not a disease. It's a process that's involved in everything around us that we are part of. So when we look at it that way, we can transform our whole. So my point being is that how does that relate to mushrooms? Well, hallucinogens and psilocybin are an amazing way to dissolve our ego, to increase entropy in the system of our nervous system, in our body. So psilocybin and entropy basically is an amazing, interesting concept, because entropy is one of the physical laws of every system, is that the tighter and the more controlled and the more organized a system is, the less entropy it has. So, and all of life, I think, is probably a cycle of increasing entropy, expansion, and less entropy, contraction. So all of life, really, you see these cycles of contraction and expansion. I think we all know that. Even the universe itself, scientists say now, James Webb Telescope is kind of changing maybe some of our ideas about the Big Bang. But if we accept the Big Bang is the predominant theory of how the universe started or what's happening in the universe, but we know that the universe is expanding. Well, this is basically increasing entropy. So in our body, in our system, as we age, entropy is changing in our body. Basically, when we're young, we're born and it's very concentrated, isn't it? Everything is very concentrated. As we get older and older, the entropy is increasing. But in our physical system, but in our mind and psyche, it's actually can be the reverse, because so many people that are closed-minded, this is what we're seeing today. So many people are closed-minded, very contracted in their thinking and in their psychological functioning, and the way that our nervous system and our brain works is so contracted and so narrow in their thinking that's what, and we think that our ego and our psyche and our soul, we think that the psyche consists of, well, this is one theory, obviously coming from Freud and Jung, but they said that our psyche basically is composed of our soul, which is the more spiritual part of our being, and our ego, which is an artificial construct that we developed over time to protect us. So that's basically our ego. Well, psilocybin dissolves and shuts down our default mode network, which is where we think our psyche is stored. And so that's pretty interesting. The whole concept of dissolving our psyche or dissolving our ego, that basically vastly increases entropy in our brain and nervous system, and allows us to see so many more limitless possibilities that are out there. And it counteracts this narrow thinking that we have, and opens us up to many new possibilities and ways of being. So this, according to Gabor Mate, this also allows us to see the actual, once we're separate from it, we can see the construction of our ego, and that these traumas are part of our ego and stored there, and early experiences, and allow us to see those, to deal with those, to release those.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like the fundamental theory of how psychedelics work to help us. So, but I have to say that, having said that, we also know that that having a psychedelic journey, like going to Peru, which I'm about ready to do, go to Peru and and I'm co-leading a group to Peru from the Shift Network. We're having 3 ayahuasca journeys and 1 San Pedro journey. So going through experiences like that, it just opens everything up, and we get so many insights and so many aha moments, so many light bulbs go off for us. But it's not a magic bullet. It's not a pill that is going to heal our psyche and get rid of all that trauma. No, we have to do the work. But it does give us the insights and the knowledge about how we can approach that and how we can heal that. And so that's called integration. And so the integration is so vital.
Yeah.
If I can get a little plug for my course, I did just finish teaching a 7-week course in psilocybin, all aspects of psilocybin. And I do get into all of this in a lot of interesting detail in the Shift course. The Shift course is over now. I just finished it, but anybody can go on there and stream the modules. So there are
Awesome.
7 weeks, there's 7 modules, and those are still available.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is really cool. I know for myself personally, psilocybin has helped me to, it shuts off the default mode network and allows you to see things from a new perspective. And it's like a peak experience, but it's like the daily practices. That's where like the real rubber meets the road.
The integration
and like meditation and ritual practice and these kind of things. Like these are how you do it on a daily basis. But also there's this difference between like macro dosing and microdosing. And psilocybin isn't as much of a part of my practice anymore, but it was, very important at those times. And I can see how like microdosing could be more akin to like doing a daily practice. Like how, and you said you did it for like 9 months at one point. Right. So what's your experience been with the difference between microdosing and macro dosing?
Yes. Well, first, I'll talk about that. The first thing I just want to mention is that when I was young, one of the key questions that I had about life is, well, who am I? What am I doing here? What am I meant? How can I contribute or whatever? How can I find myself? All of those questions. Well,
what myself? What am I?
What's going on here? This is crazy place that I got born in. So naturally, that's one of our first questions. But my next question was, and I had this question early on: what is disease and what is health? Why do some people get sick, and why do some people stay healthy, even with the same habits?
Yeah.
And so this was a central question of my life. And what I've come to realize finally is that health is not a thing. Health is a process. And so health is a practice. So that goes back to what you were saying, is that health is definitely a practice. So when people say, how can I get healthy? Well, there's no herbs. And my teacher, Paul Bragg, always used to say, I'd go to these, presentations that he would do, and there might be hundreds of people in the audience, and somebody would raise their hand and say, how can I get rid of arthritis? I've got arthritis. How can I get rid of it? Well, he goes, I have no miracle cures for you, dear. I have nothing. It's because it's always a total program for health. And so that was my key concept. That was my aha moment. Oh yeah, all of disease, it's a total program for health, which means it's a process. That's the whole thing about health and disease. It's a process, and it's everything that's around us too. So having said that, and it's based on what you're saying, is that it really is integration. It's a process. And another quick thing that I'll mention is that, and this is like the poster child for what psychedelics can do, is the actor Cary Grant. You know who he is?
Yeah.
So the actor Cary Grant in the 1950s, Cary Grant had a lot of childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. His mother, his stepdad sent his mother to a psychiatric hospital, and she wasn't crazy. He just wanted to get rid of her. So he sent her to a psychiatric hospital, and all of a sudden, Archie Leach, which was his name, Archie Leach suddenly didn't have a mom, and his dad was abusive, and he had all kinds of trauma over this. And so then when he was old enough, maybe 10 or 12, he went to the circus, a local circus in London, and really liked it, and said, hey, I could do that. I could be he was very athletic. So he said, I want to be a juggler. I want to be an acrobat. So he actually ran away with the circus to America and to New York, and eventually went into vaudeville, and eventually created this persona of Cary Grant. And that was very successful. He was one of the greatest actors of all time, doing comedy and everything. But underneath, he still had all of this trauma.
Yeah.
So everybody thought of him as this, this person of Cary Grant is so friendly and has such a great sense of humor, so handsome. But that was all put on. That was all an act. And that wasn't who he was. He was really lonely and stingy and had all these other problems, depression and anxiety. So he met the psychiatrist in Hollywood in the mid 1950s, who was using LSD, and all of these stars were coming to him to take psychedelic journeys for their problems. Probably a lot of actors and actresses, that's why they became actors and actresses, because they had all this childhood trauma, and they were good at expressing, heavy stuff and the dark side. Meanwhile, they created this persona of a very, so basically what Cary Grant did. So the bottom line is Cary Grant had to go through 100 psychedelic journeys before he said, I'm finally where I want to be. I'm finally, I feel loving towards everybody and myself. I'm so happy. I'm so, have so much equanimity now. And I'm so grateful for LSD. So what a story, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so that just goes back to that. Some people may need dozens of journeys before it really dissolves their ego to the point where they can really see what's going on beneath the surface. But Cary Grant needed 100, and that's because he didn't have the tools that we have today. He didn't have meditation. I know more about that. He didn't have yoga. That wasn't a thing back in the 1950s. So he didn't have all these tools that we have now. So presumably you won't have to take 100 trips to really get down to the bottom of things. But so back to your question of microdosing, I think microdosing can start really, especially if it's practiced regularly. Microdosing, which is basically 150, about 150 milligrams to about 400 milligrams. That's my general range for microdosing. You can go, some people say up to a gram, but I think that's very distracting if you're getting up over 500 milligrams.
Yeah.
Now remember, mushrooms can be very distracting. So the goal is microdosing is to take enough so that it's starting to work inside your nervous system and your brain to create more entropy at the same time, and loosen up and open up your thinking and possibilities in your nervous system. While at the same time, we know through research that microdosing psilocybin every day can have a really beneficial effect on our psyche and our nervous system, our palisade cells or pyramid cells, and our microglia. So the microglia are these immune cells that are traveling all around our brain and helping increase the health of our nerve cells. All of these, many nerve cells in our cortex. It can help increase the health. It can reduce inflammation. It can help the nerve cells get access to more nutrition, to remove waste products better, and so forth. So by daily microdosing it, we think that we can really improve the health of our brain and longevity, reduce inflammation, and get better neurological functioning. This is the hypothesis, though there are no clinical trials really to prove that, but there are some animal studies and in vitro studies showing that these things are happening in there. So that's, I found, all I can tell you is that I've been microdosing for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's been an amazing part of my, process of gaining wisdom, gaining more openness. And then of course, I underwent vigorous science training for 10 years at UC Berkeley. And that at the end of the day, people saying, well, what did that do for you? And I said, it helped me show that I know nothing.
Well, that's what Socrates starts out with. So it's important too.
Yeah.
So it gets rid of the best thing you can do doing 10 years of hard science training, day after day after day, every day, dreaming about it. When you get to your end of the Ph.D., you're basically doing your thesis and you're just dreaming about it. It's basically you get up in the morning, you're doing it until you fall asleep, you're dreaming about it, and you get up the next morning, you're doing it again. So what all that leads to is it gets rid of your notions. It gets rid of the things you think you know.
Oh, cool.
And so that's the advantage of a PhD and hard science training. If it's good science training, and it is at Berkeley because they're very supportive there. But that's an unintended benefit that no one told me about. So and that's what psychedelics do too. They work great with a really good holistic science training. Like Berkeley, they call it integrative biology because it includes all parts of the study of life, basically. So psychedelics to me have been a life changer. It's been really increased my interest in learning, growing wisdom, and gaining wisdom, in helping, in giving back, and getting rid of this sense of, oh, I'm such a great person, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of that, it gets rid of all of that, When I first started out and I was writing books and speaking in front of hundreds of people, I was going, oh, I'm a really great teacher. I'm blah, blah, blah. I got rid of all of that stuff. It's so, because all it does is separate you from what's really important, and that is giving back and love and loving and inspiring. So those, and we're just channels anyway. We don't own it. We don't own anything. We're just channels. We're inspired by our teachers. And so I give so much gratitude to my teachers. And then we just pass it on. So it's karma yoga, basically, and it's not holding on to it. And any teacher out there that is like aggrandizing themselves and puffing themselves up, then forget it. To me, that's not the real teaching I'm looking for.
For sure. Just another quick question came to mind when you were talking about microdosing psilocybin and how it's has beneficial effects for our nervous system and for the nerves in the brain. And it sounded like you could have been talking about lion's mane too as like a nervous system tonic. And so I'm wondering if you've ever done like lion's mane and microdosing at the same time, and if that has increased effects, or if there's been any studies on lion's mane and microdosing psilocybin.
Well, there's a category of herbs or herb foods or drugs even that are called nootropics, nootropics, nootropics.
Yeah.
And supposedly lion's mane is a nootropic, obviously. So it has an effect on our cognition, our memory, and so forth. But having said that, and I'd love to say, well, yeah, you can add lion's mane to psilocybin. Psilocybin, there are two great nootropics that are from a natural source that I'm in favor of. And one is, of course, psychedelics, any natural psychedelics like psilocybin. And the other is matcha, or matcha tea, which I feel like is a really great time-honored nootropic. And it's fantastic because matcha is micropowdered green tea, but it's a type of green tea that contains a lot of L-theanine. And L-theanine is a very good special amino acid that calms us and also has a beneficial effect on our nervous system. So I drink matcha and reishi pretty much every morning. That's my morning drink. And here's the matcha that I like right here. I don't have any stock in the company, but this is the matcha that I drink.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Good high quality organic Japanese matcha.
Awesome.
So those are those have clinical trials behind them, and we know that those really do have a profound effect. However, lion's mane is being called a nootropic, and it does have in vivo and in vitro studies showing that it can increase nerve growth factor production in animal studies and in vitro studies, test tubes. So that's great. That's wonderful. There are a couple of very small underpowered studies showing that using lion's mane extract can slightly improve our memory and our mood and help reduce anxiety and depression. But these three studies are very low powered. They included 30 people, 40 people, 50 people around that area.
That's not impressive.
It's not very impressive.
Yeah.
So and a lot of company, and these are probably company sponsored, and probably and so this is made marketing mainly has made lion's mane about the #1 selling medicinal mushroom in the country. So lion's mane, though, is a very valuable medicinal mushroom. For one thing, and in Asia, it's very popular. People use lion's mane extracts every day as a supplement, as a powder. I think it's a great extract. It's a great product to take. One of the main things that we know that it does, it protects your stomach from inflammation. So it's probably along with chaga also works the same way. It really, and at one point, Tagamet and anti-ulcer drugs were the #1 selling pharmaceutical in the country. I'm not sure if they still are, but for a long time there, for a decade, that was the #1 selling drug because we're all stressed out. We're all getting stomach inflammation and gastric ulcers and so forth. Well, this is all of this drugs to shut down our production of hydrochloric acid and try to suppress the stomach's function so that we don't get gastritis and heartburn and all of that stuff. So that's very, very common. But lion's mane is one of the main mushrooms that you can drink every day to help protect your stomach, to reduce inflammation, and along with chaga. But lion's mane for neurological benefits, it's all theoretical, folks, I'm afraid. It's pretty much all
right. That's good.
It's I would use it. It's all an experiment. We know that it's healthy. We know that it's a good mushroom to eat as a food medicine. So there's no problem in eating it and using it regularly. And it may help work as a nootropic. It may help support our nervous system. It may help speed up nerve growth and repair. And it's all based on animal studies and laboratory studies.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And the best way to extract, because lion's mane to me seems a little different than a lot of medicinal mushrooms. It's a lot like fleshier, softer. Is mushroom powder the best way to use lion's mane too, in your opinion?
Well, probably the best way is to eat it.
Okay. Yeah. And it's so tasty. So
so tasty, and shiitake too.
Oh yeah.
Or another really good way, say if you've got a good source of organic, or you're growing organic shiitake or lion's mane, easy to grow at home. You can get kits. You can, in my book, we describe how to grow it, or you can buy, like in the Bay Area here, we can go to Berkeley Bowl or Monterey Market, and we can buy pounds of fresh organic lion's mane and anything else practically.
So jealous of your mushroom market. I'm
Yeah,
very jealous.
it's just so incredible.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when I to go there.
Mhm.
Big aisles of just like all these
Yes.
mushrooms, wood ear,
Ah,
everything. And then
yeah.
chanterelle and porcini in
Mhm.
season, they're all there. So
Mhm.
it's so exciting. But having said that, um, you know, one of the great ways to capture the medicine of lion's mane and some of these fleshy, tender mushrooms, like probably the best four that I'm thinking of are lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, and
Oyster.
wood ear and oyster. So those are the five that
Okay.
are really tender, but they have a lot of medicine in them.
Mhm.
The way to do it is, you know, just add them to your food, of course, but a way to make a medicine that you can take teaspoons of it every morning is simply, again, you just put it in your pressure cooker or simmer it for a while till it's tender, and then you blend it up with some water. You could put some other herbs in there if you want, herb powders or
Mhm.
like astragalus or
Oh yeah. Yeah.
licorice or
Mhm.
whatever herbs you want to put in there, or green tea, whatever. And then you blend it up, and then you make a slurry and you add 1 teaspoon per pint vitamin C, and then stir that up in there. And that'll last in your refrigerator for weeks and weeks without fermenting. And you can just take a teaspoon of that every day or
Awesome.
so you're broken it down. You've got the mushroom medicine right there. It's in an easy assimilable form with those tender mushrooms. You can't do that so much with reishi and turkey tail, but you could make a just like a slurry, add vitamin C. If you want to preserve it very long term, then add 25% ethanol. That'll
Mhm.
preserve it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
That's a
And then
cool
if you want
idea.
to preserve it even longer, then just go ahead and make a powder out of it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There is one other thing I wanted to ask about as far as like using mycelium or fruiting bodies. And that's like when I go out and harvest, well, when I go out and harvest reishi, I can't get the mycelium anyway. It's in the tree, you know. But
Right.
the mushroom has this shellac on it, and it'll have like the brown spores on it. In aren't there more like terpenes and so on in that shellac than in the like the white mycelium? Or is it the same thing?
Not really worth bothering with. It's
Okay.
just, no, I mean, when you're cooking up the whole mushroom, you're going to get it all. You're going to get the spores. Some
Right.
people sell crack spore products in Asia. You know, it's a
Huh.
thing in Asia. So they take this, they collect the spores, the billions of spores, and get a powder, and then they expose it to microwave and crack open the spores, and you get all these sterols and anti-inflammatory stuff and triterpenes and so forth. So that's a product, that's a thing
Huh.
in Asia. But you know, when it comes to the little layer of spores on top, sure, capture that when you're making your medicine. But the shellac, you know, I don't know. That's kind of a resin. That's a resin that the mushroom produces to make that shiny surface. I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a small amount of shellac there that it's not really going to make a big difference in the medicine, whether you have it or not.
Mhm.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you for really diving into all of these concepts with us and telling us how you make the mushroom powders. And I really appreciate all of your insights and how you've incorporated your years of research and your years of being an herbalist and just everything to, I don't know, just help us to live healthy lives. And I've learned so much from you over the last few years from afar. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and share this knowledge with our listeners. So this has been really awesome. And I appreciate you, Christopher.
Thank you. Yeah, we did. That was kind of a deep dive. Well, maybe a little deeper than you wanted, but
No,
No,
that's
heck
side
fantastic.
stories here and there.
no.
But
That's why that's exactly what we're going for on this podcast. So you did great. Thank you so much again. And
yeah,
enjoy the rest of your day.
Well,
Yeah.
also,
okay.
is there anything you're excited about in the future? Are you offering any new courses?
Oh, yeah, that part.
Soon, or anything that people should be aware of?
Yeah.
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram, and I'm doing a lot of reels on Instagram. So I've got
Okay.
about over 100 herb and mushroom reels.
Cool.
So you can check that out, Christopher Hobbs 1. I'm on Facebook. I have a professional page, Dr. Christopher Hobbs. You can check out my posts there, which are sometimes science-based, just new breakthroughs and how, and so forth. And then also I'm on YouTube and I'm on Twitter. So you can follow me on any of those places. And I will be offering, my next series is going to be on anxiety and mood disorders.
Oh, cool.
So we're working on that right now. That won't be available for another month or two, but watch for that. And you can also go to my website, christopherhobbs.com, and you can add your name to my mailing list, and then I'll send you notices when I'm doing my class courses and so forth. So, and there's a lot of resources on there, handouts, videos, and so forth on christopherhobbs.com. So that's my next series will be on, and my medicinal mushroom series is available both on the Shift Network. It's a seven-week course on all aspects of medicinal mushrooms. And it's also on, it's on the Shift Network, and it's also on the Botanic Wise platform, BOTANIC, Botanic Wise platform. And you can stream those if you want as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, great.
So yeah.
Thank you again.
Thanks again. And